What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. For today's video, we're going to be checking out the Transformers 1 Deluxe class Quintesson High Commander, which I think is easily shaping up to be not only one of the more interesting characters, but also redesigns, because in comparison to how these bad boys originally appeared in the '86 movie, this guy is way more organic when it does come down to a design. So as we check out the details, the head sculpt actually looks really well done, and if anything, appears to take a lot of inspiration from one of the original 5 faces that we did see back in the day. I'm also digging some of the really gnarly tendon detail which can be seen surrounding the neck, and I do just think it's sick in general that this Quintesson appears to be slightly more organic in comparison to mechanic, with the exception of one minor augmentation that appears to have been made to this side. Those electric green highlights are definitely giving me the vibe that in the movie, this guy will have a full-blown inbuilt arm cannon. Now as we spin down here to the base of the figure, I do think this is arguably the weakest part about the entire release, and it's just simply due to this design being incredibly ambitious. If we were to judge by the most recent teaser trailer, I do believe these guys, much like the original Quintessons, are going to be floating around on these pretty sick looking tendrils. Although the way they've kind of gone about it when it comes to this guy is creating a base, which whilst as a concept I think is a pretty neat idea, in execution, honestly guys, this just comes across as being super cheap, because not only is it incredibly thin, but unfortunately none of the tendril detail has been painted. But as we spin him around here to the back, the details are most definitely the biggest selling point. The serrated spinal column, yet again, I think is looking epic, and the overall organic texture, I think again, looks really nasty. So overall, it definitely is a pretty interesting take on the original Quintesson character, but I would be lying to you guys if I said that stacked up against the rest of the Transformers 1 Deluxes, this guy definitely didn't fall short. And I think unfortunately the same can absolutely be said as we check out the accessories, because not only does he include the least out of the bunch, but easily the most basic and simplistic, because we only get one very simple Energon cube included. Although when it does come down to the weapon storage, this is actually incredibly neat. So you are going to take a hold of the front half of the Quintesson and slide this here down. We are then going to take this section and pop this here clean up. Now stored inside is in fact a pretty big gaping hole, which, as I'm sure you guys would then guess, the Energon Cube does very nicely store inside. You then will have no issues in closing all of this back up into its original configuration, so this weapon storage does lead me to believe that perhaps in the movie, the Quintessons may have something to do with the Energon Cubes. Perhaps they have been sent down in order to harvest the Energon. I guess only time will tell. Checking out the High Commander's posability, due to the crazy design, to be honest, this is pretty much a glorified brick. So to begin with, the head is on a ball joint, so this will look up and down very slightly. It can then spin left to right, although from certain angles, kind of looks like this guy's had his neck broken, which in the case of this figure, I don't really think would be a bad thing. The shoulders are on ball joints, so these will kick outwards. They will kick forwards, although again at a slight angle, mainly just due to the design. They can then also kick backwards. The same can also be said for the elbow, so these will crunch forwards. They can then be spun all the way around. In terms of the waist, to be honest guys, there is pretty much next to nothing. If you really wanted to make use out of the transformation joint, I guess you could say that he does have an ab crunch, which to be fair is pretty decent, especially for having him tower over the likes of the core class Transformers. And then as far as these tendrils go, these merely just kick outwards. They do not move forwards and backwards. So when it does come down to posability, this guy is severely hindered, and as far as the pose test goes, this is going to be like pulling teeth. But as I'm sure you guys all know by now, to see the true power of the High Commander, let's put him through the pose test. Flying through some comparisons, of course we had to bring out the original version, that being the Transformers Earthrise Quintesson. Now when it does come down to a redesign, whilst I do really like the way the brand new Quintesson looks, this most definitely is a case where old is gold, because the original, even being roughly 40 years old, still absolutely slaps. And in some ways, I do wish that maybe they could have approached the base of this guy in a very similar manner to this one, where they simply attached a pretty epic blast effect on the base and gave him a shit ton of additional tendrils. Had they been able to do that with this version, then personally I think the lower half could have potentially had been as strong as the entire upper half. Here is how he compares alongside the Transformers 1 Studio Series Optimus Prime. Now if we were to judge by the original teaser trailer, this guy looks to absolutely tower over the likes of Sentinel Prime, which I do believe it's already been confirmed is bigger than Optimus Prime. So in terms of a scale, unfortunately this right here is completely off, and the same can absolutely be said as we begin to bring out some of those mainline deluxes. So here we we have Optimus Prime / Orion Pax, the Great Sentinel Prime, who I still think absolutely reigns supreme over all of these mainline deluxes, B-127 aka
Badassatron.
Next up, we have Alpha Trion, and surely I'm not the only one that thinks that these two would make for excellent rivals. I'm really hoping that at one stage in the movie we do see this guy go up against the Quintessons, because it would be pretty epic to see these guys throwing it down. And for a slightly more recent generation Studio Series comparison, here we have the 86 movie Bumblebee. Slithering into this guy's transformation, despite all of the bad things that I could say about this guy, and trust me, there are a lot, the one good thing I most definitely think is the transformation. So, for the first step, take a hold of the ball jointed shoulders and slide these here upwards. You must then make sure to compress downwards at the elbow and then spin this here all of the way around like that. Again guys, make sure to do the same for the second side, so slide upwards, angle down at the elbow and then slide here outwards. We are then going to take a hold of the head sculpt, and you must then make sure to spin this all the way around until the bottom is now facing the top. We can then take a hold of the head crest and detach the entire neck away from the torso. What we are now going to do is make use out of this additional hinge joint, because we are going to begin to slide the head all the way down until eventually the head crest does slide into that tiny hollow cavity. Once that's all said and done, we can now come here to the torso, where we are going to take the skirt and slide this here forwards. You are then going to take a hold of the entire chest unit and also bring this forwards. You must then make sure to spin around here at the torso just like that. We are now going to take a hold of the head, and this should very nicely slide inside that hollow cavity. We are then going to make use out of the nose cone of the jet mode, so pull this forwards until this too does snap there into place. What you must then make sure to do is spin around here to the back of this guy, where we are going to take the base and slide this section here upwards. You must then make sure to take this and slide this here downwards. We are then going to begin to compress these tendrils here inwards exactly like that. Now once that's all said and done, it should then expose these two additional slots, which are then going to slide into those tabs. So take a hold of this and slide this all the way down until that there does very nicely snap into place. What you are then going to do is flip this guy up to the top. These tabs here should then very nicely slide into those slots, and again guys, make sure to do the same for the second side. For one final touch, we are then going to spin this guy here to the underside, where you must then make sure to take a hold of this component and again completely flatten this back down into its original robot mode configuration. And bang! Here we have the Quintesson, now fully transformed into its Cybertronian spacecraft, and it definitely looks cool. Now I could be mistaken, but much like the original 1986 movie design, I don't believe the Quintessons will actually transform in the movie. So for the sake of giving this guy an alt mode, they appear to have based this off the actual Quintesson mothership, which I do believe we have seen in the most recent teaser trailer. And when it does come down to the overall design, this actually looks to be incredibly close. The sculpting throughout, again, I think is looking sick, especially as we spin him here to the underside. Not only is he still packing the Energon Cube, but there is barely any undercarriage kibble, much like the Transformers 1 Sentinel Prime, and as we spin him around here to the back, he is also packing an Energon Turbo Booster. Now considering that this has also been cast out of the same purple as the Energon Cube, yet again guys, I am led to believe that at some point in the movie, the Quintessons will be sent down in order to harvest Energon, but at least for the time being, they can totally use this in order to turbo boost themselves through the Cybertronian battlefield. Flying through some jet mode size comparisons, first of all we are bringing out the Transformers 1 Deluxe class Sentinel Prime, so most definitely not in scale with each other, but when it does come down to a general Deluxe class size up, I actually think they are pretty much on par with each other. And to kind of go back to my earlier point, despite both of these only being mainline Deluxes, I think they handle the undercarriage kibble fantastically. Here is how he stacks up against the Studio Series Transformers 1 Deluxe class Optimus Prime, and it would definitely be interesting to see maybe a Studio Series take on this design. If they could perhaps bump him up to that of a Voyager class, I think we could be in for a treat, because when it did come down to the Earthrise version, personally I thought that was by far one of the hidden gems from that trilogy. Then finally, for one general size comparison, we have the Studio Series 86 Deluxe class Bumblebee. So, wrapping up on this review for the Transformers 1 Deluxe class Quintesson High Commander. Honestly guys, I do definitely view this as being a mixed bag. When it comes down to being compared against the rest of the Transformers 1 mainline, this guy most definitely falls kinda short. Despite looking the part compared against the actual CG render, in hand he feels incredibly cheap. There is by no means as much plastic put into this guy as the likes of Optimus Prime or even Bumblebee. I do think had he instead retailed for roughly around $10 to $15, then maybe I I would have had a slightly easier time in swallowing its drawbacks. Now, when it comes down to a recommendation, personally I would say to leave this completely. I do not think in comparison to the rest of the lineup, this one is really worth picking up. But for those of you who do want the Quintesson High Commander in your collection, then I would definitely say to wait for a sale. Do not pay full price for this, because I really don't think it is worth it in the slightest. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this figure down in the comment section below. What do you guys think? I want to thank you all so much for watching, and until my next video, transform and roll out!